the whole lore around Alta Face is still really vague, and we don't have a whole lot to go off of. But what we do have so far is its general kind of lore that's known to the people in Alantir. We have stuff from the Grand White Priestess after they're getting everybody pretty much out of any populated areas because the hands are just going crazy, smashing everything around them and just going wild. Pretty much, they're just completely out of control, destroying everything. Obviously, this is one of the reasons why they have to keep the magic in Elantir under control, because then they run into situations like this where there's just chaos everywhere, and the only way seemingly to defeat it and stop all these hands is to destroy Alta Face. Now, I didn't think they were going to actually go to battle with Alta Face, because I figured that if it's destroyed, does that mean that all the magic in Elantir is going to go away? Because like the dude said he's the source of the magic in Elantir. Maybe it's just a mistranslation from the fan translations, but I think I'm willing to at least assume that like at this point they're not, like, the magic in the entire world is not anyway. Like this whole dimension's magic is not going to vanish because Alta Face is destroyed. There's definitely going to be some form of repercussion, I would assume, but it's not something that is like guaranteed to happen. It could just be that there's like a certain amount of ether nano that's going to be in the air, like just kind of like a set level. Because when the Grand Whiteout Priestess explains it, she's saying how in old time there was this kind of creature that caused calamities all over the world, and that being is Alta Face, because it was just increase magic and keep amplifying it without any limitations. It was just doing its thing, being an uncontrollable I almost said Mana, this is Black Clover, ether nano producing machine. Like it's just out of control, doing everything it can to spread more magic throughout the world and set up the hands to just, I would assume, crush everything on the surface. Just like completely destroy everything around them entirely. And while they're not saying like, oh, Ferris is like, oh, using its magical power, like this thing like destroyed cities, towns, relatively anything that they decided to come close to. But it's because of the whole Whiteout Church that they were able to keep it under control, keep Alta Face sealed, and probably just limit the whole danger of this thing and everything really around it to a complete minimum. They want to keep it just like calm as hell, and it's not looking possible here because now the creature's just like gained its own level of self-awareness, its own sentience because of Selene. And I wonder how exactly that's going to work. Like, did Selene go there and do something to make it sentient, or is it just because Selene is messing with the magic in the whole dimension that it's causing Alta Face and everything around to kind of get wild and just become completely out of control? But right now, there's the whole issue of, okay, well, they gotta take it out, and we do see at the end of the chapter it get wrecked, but I do remember that there is a way that could still go on. Now, the stuff with Face, when like Wendy destroyed the first one, I'd assume that's not going to be the same case here, because that would be a really weird kind of twist if it's like, okay, well, it's still going to go off. Okay, well, then how do they deal with it? How, like, the whole follow-up of where this is going to go, it's definitely going to direct how, where this arc really goes, I would assume. It'd be really weird if Mishima just introduced this for 2 chapters just to be there and exist. I did really love this panel, though. So, like, this panel is fantastic, but I don't think it would be worth it to just have pretty much 2 chapters of a bi-weekly series, so like a full month of just stuff that didn't matter. I think Alta Face is going to be really important. It might have, a clear connection to Face over in Earthland. There's a lot of questions about its existence and what exactly it's tied to that need to be answered. But right now, there's something like, well, a while ago, it was sealed up. We had it mostly under control. Whiteout Villages priests and priestesses would go out, zero out the magic to a good extent, and then return home. They had to keep it under wraps. It's really interesting because, like, Elantir, you have Edelus, who now has no magic, Elantir, who has too much magic, and you have Earthland, who's is still increasing, but it seems to be at a gradual rate, so there's no worry about, like, the craziness going up to a ridiculous amount, like we've seen in, I guess we've seen here. Like, it's not going to be that insane, but at the same time, I feel like with Earthland's rise in magic, it's way more natural, whereas this is not something that should happen logically within the structure of the world, and things are just kind of going crazy now because of it. And then she's like, the Grand White Out Priestess is like, okay, well, what we can do right now is give our faith in the fairies from, from another world, that being the main fairy cast, the Fairy Tale Guild. They've got stuff that they've got to do in order to, take this kind of... It's actually a lot bigger up close than I thought. I'm pretty sure it's bigger than Face, because, like, we see the characters running up to it. It's pretty big, but obviously at that point, it's a perspective thing. And they're all just thinking, like, okay, well, we got to figure out what we have. We got to get all this done. Wendy goes and enchants everybody, and they all do some really good combo attacks. Like, Natsu pulls out his Demolition Fist. Gray's got his Zeroth Longsword. Wendy's just doing a Roar. Lucy's doing Aquametria. Urza's just doing like a whole Benny's Akra Slash. Wendy and Urza's were like not that hype in comparison. Like, this is like one of Lucy's biggest spells. As far as we know, the only things that would be like raw more powerful than Aquametria would be something like Aranometria, or some like really broken like offensive Star Dress. Like if you had Leo and Aquarius, or like Leo and Caprico. Caprico obviously being a really good hand-to-hand as well, but it's not that, it's, it's still pretty good. Like, Urza's is probably the least hype, at least out of like the comparison to these other swords. Like Gray's, like you have Natsu, who's just, it's really cool seeing like this big, pretty much beam almost of flames, just this big cone of heat, and then Gray's looking badass in that whole form. You only see part of it up. You see like part of his eye, but he's got the whole resheathed sword stance with his ice blade, and it doesn't really do anything. Like they're pretty much fine. There doesn't seem to be any issue of what they have to contend with at this point. Now, granted, this thing isn't invincible. It's not like there's like nobody ever that can take out one of the phases. The only thing about Face that seems dangerous is when it starts to kind of like absorb the magic in the general area. But if, like, say you were strong enough and you could just rip Face out of the ground and throw it into space, kind of like full-size Makarov. He's like a mile tall, so I fully see him capable of doing that, just completely chucking this dude pretty much his body length and maybe like a couple times more. But still, like, that's not hard when you actually think about it. But right now, they're only doing so much they can. It's almost if they just had Prime Makarov, or at least Makarov before, like Serious Side Makarov, he goes to his max size, just like a mile, picks up Alta Face, throws them into space. He's pretty much just picking them up, chucking them. That'd be pretty sick. But while it's responding, it makes these little light orbs of just concentrated ether nano, and they're all getting blasted. And during the process, they're saying, okay, well, I can't use magic anymore. My magic in my body is gone. What are we supposed to do? How did this happen? And it seemed like it was something this Alta Face could do, because it would make sense of why it's able to mess with magic, considering it does the same thing. Like, Face did the same thing at a core standpoint. Obviously, it was different how it operated and the different ways it was used, but it's not something that is like it's not something that is too wild and out there. Either way, the whole thing with that, like, they're not able to finish off like defeating him, but at that point. But while they're doing, they're saying, oh, I don't have magic, I can't do anything. Like, they're unsure of what just transpired to, obviously drain them of their magic. It would probably be really weird if you had no idea what's up. That would probably just be like a full scale, yeah, nope, turn around and leave. Hey, I don't feel like fighting this guy if he just turned off all my powers and just, leave me for dead. You see this sick beam come out of the ground, and I wish we got more stuff. Like, if you look at the beam, you see like the ground all burnt and like cracked up, kind of like if you see like I see it mostly like when attacks hit, like a lightning strike happens in an area, you see like the damage, and outside of the damage it's just, well, outside of the general damage, you have all these like broken molten rocks and stuff, but they're all just getting blasted. They're not really sure what's going on. They're saying they can't use magic, and it's clearly like a confusion point to them. Lucy's not sure, Urza's not sure. That's when the ever so knowledgeable Irene shows up to talk to Wendy. She goes and says like, oh, well, it's because, you know, their power has been pushed to its limits. Your body thinks the magical power is 0. And it's a little weird, like when she's describing it, she's saying, oh, like it's kind of like you have a display of 99. Instead of going to like 100, because there's only 2 number slots, it'll just flip back to 0. And I can definitely understand that aspect of it. Like it's a really weird thing. Like I wonder what happened if the series just like in real life, if they added an extra slot to like that. Like, okay, you can go up to 100 and then you go up to 9999 and then you just do it for the 1,000. Nothing crazy. But when she's saying everything that she has about it, she's like, oh, well, suppose you have something that can only split up to 99. What happened if it, you know, it reached 100? It would flip to 0. Pretty much just keep going. And Wendy, when she's talking to Irene and saying like, oh, it's the magic that this thing is producing makes all of their magic stronger, like essentially to its limit. Like it's because this thing is like gathering so much ether nano in the general area that their bodies are absorbing just a higher amount than they're used to, and they just have no full scale on how to do it. Like how she explained, it's to them it's that it's not working, but in reality it's just it's like a trick. Again, think of the 99 clock just goes back to 00 instead of hits 100. And he's telling Wendy, like, oh, you know, just kind of like piping up. She's like, you know, I'll help you, you know, remember everything about your body and your magic and how it kind of ties together and how many hardships she's done. It shows all these parts where Wendy's having some really badass moments. You have, well, starts out sad. You have the part with Cat Shelter and how that went down. You have a part from the fight with Faust and the Dora Amun. You have the fight with Hades, with Sharia. You got her against Zirconis when she got Dragon Force. There's a part where she fought Demaria, and then recently when it was up against Nibiru. And that's when everyone's like, okay, well, do you understand what I'm saying here? And that's when Wendy realizes that she hasn't surpassed her limits yet, sort of. Well, it's more like she hasn't hit her limit, but she's going to surpass where she's currently at. Because, I mean, technically, you can't say you actually like, have a limit unless it's like confirmed that you can't get stronger. But it's very clear that she can get more powerful with stuff like training experience and whatnot. But she ends up boosting herself up, like enchanting herself, and that's when you have Wendy in like a new type of Dragon Force. Like I don't think it's maybe like a brand new type, but more of like a progression of where she was already at. Because the weirdness of Sky Dragons is instead they have feathers. That's why when we saw Wendy get the Dragon Force against Easel, she had these feathers around her wrists and on her back. But now she's got like these weird energy things going on. Like she's got these sick 2 rings on each hand. He also has this big energy kind of set of wings coming off her back. I really like this design for Wendy. It looks fantastic. Everyone obviously there is like really kind of weirded out that she is suddenly an adult. Natsu and Gray were just like, what? What's going on there? It just seemed flabbergasted. And she just informed me it's only temporary, but she's a little bummed for a second that she doesn't have big boobs even at this age. I would say though, I mean, like she's got some sick thighs on adult Wendy specifically. Before anyone tries to cancel me, but while she's like pretty much just trying to get herself together, she's like, hey, just so you guys know, your magic and your body are just having a misunderstanding issue. Your power hasn't reached 0. It's just currently gone beyond where it's used to. So that they have reached new heights just being around this guy and, you know, being an Ellen tier. I would assume that, like, you don't get the Ellen tier buff and the face, like, Alta Face buff, because the magic in Ellen tier is, like, at least, like, the super concentrated high version is from, like it's from this dude. Like, it's entirely from Alta Face. So I don't think that it's going to be like all the magic is gone, because then it's like, well, why do they stick you around Edelus? Plus, they wouldn't have a way to get home, because you wouldn't have anyone to use any of the portals for them to get by and go back to Earthland, which is probably, like, now that I think about it, like, I don't think that could happen unless there was some alternative way that they were going to be able to actually use magic. Like, if it wouldn't make sense if Alta Face was destroyed and then they just, magic is gone and the main characters, like, just leave. Like, I think that would be ridiculous, because they're going to want to do their thing. They're going to want to help and do, you know, pretty much assist everybody that they can, you know, on their pathway and do good things. And I don't imagine kind of like putting them out with no magic is going to be the best solution, because they don't seem to really have much of a problem, like in comparison to, like, you just remember how Edelus was, where they were just ready to sacrifice people not associated with their country for their country, and as well as like eradicating the exceed and stuff. It just was not a good look for them whatsoever. Like none of that ended up being on their favor. Anyway, Wendy explains that there's not going to be like a long time that they can do this. You have everybody pretty much going in. Natsu's hair, like, oddly enough, kind of looks like how it was when he went into his Aetherius Dragon Force, at least in that panel, because it looks, I think it's just because of the way that it's kind of like pulled back. But when they all kind of go in, they're just kind of laying in attacks. You get a really cool couple combos. Like, they're like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter who's ugly and who's beautiful, because his face is like saying like, oh man, this is all really ugly, this is all horrible. But they're like, hey, no matter what, we do things our way. Like, that's pretty much John's saying, like, yeah, we don't give a shit. We're gonna do it the way that we are pretty much comfortable and set to do it. You can kind of just shut up and deal with it. And they pretty much just obliterated this thing. They kind of just went right through it, just wrecking it, slamming right into it, and it ends up shattering. And you get this really sick panel with the whole team, the whole main cast, all doing their own moves. Like, Gray's in there, like, get right after a sword slash. I was still wish that he used archery, because, like, having Urza already there means, like, they have a sword person. They don't need another sword person. Nothing against Gray, but I don't know. I feel like it would either... I think it would both take away some of Urza's identity as primarily being a swordswoman, but also... I do think that if Gray was going to use a weapon, I don't think sword would really be his best bet. I don't know. I just have this idea of him using something maybe like an axe or a... I was going to say spear, but that's pretty much just Musica from Raidmaster. Anyway, like seeing the whole main cast all spread out, that was really cool. I like how serious they all were and they were all ready to get shit done. And they all have pretty sick poses. Graysen's a badass pose. Ursa's got her sword. Wendy's got her arms raised up after doing a big attack. Natsu's just kind of like up in the front, like punching near the bottom of the panel, just kind of wrecking it. And then you have Lucy just looking a little bit mad at things. I know she's not actually mad, but it's still looking pretty cool. Like, the whole main cast spread out in some big attack like that is badass. It was really fun to see just the existence of that panel, because it's just cool seeing like everybody work together to have like a good moment. And while they're doing it, you have like Natsu say, like, because he's like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter, who cares if you know, if this stuff is ugly or beautiful. Nobody, no matter what anybody says, like, we'll do things our way. And then it's that last moment when it's crumbling and Natsu's like, that's what it's to be a fairy tale wizard. Like, that is what it's like to be one. So I thought this was a pretty solid chapter. It's really gonna depend. Like, it was cool in the general stuff around Alta Face and like the characters getting this kind of boost. Like, they're pretty much being aware that they still have a lot of area to grow, and they just all reach like this threshold right now that they pretty much have to just step through, and they're good. But it was still a really solid time. I would say that the total quality of how it actually is going to be, like how I would rate this in a longer run, is like, if we're going to get any more lore on Delta, or I keep almost saying Delta Face, Alta Face, is it related to Hands? What exactly it is, or sorry, not Hands, the original Face, the Earthland Face. Like, what's the tie there? What is Mishima doing that whole setup is going to eventually make sense? That's one of the weirder ones to me, because everything else, I think for the most part, was pretty fair to get. Like, you could kind of guess at, some parts, but it's like, I don't think anybody was like, oh man, I've been on 100 Years Quest. They're all going to kind of get grouped together and fight some big face-shaped statue with a bunch of arms. It's a weird setup, but like I said, it has a lot of potential on expanding on the lore with Face, telling us where it came from. Maybe it's going to introduce whoever it was that made them. There's a lot of questions as to the general setup as things are going right now, but I did think this was pretty solid. Like, just seeing all the characters grouped up, you got stuff with Face, but the thing with Alta Face, like I said, it's really going to determine my take on these last two chapters. Because like, as long as Alta Face has some form of like larger scale importance, like there's something other than like he showed up and he was destroyed, then I'll be happy as long as that's never the case. Because then it's just like, well, how much of how is this guy even really around if all it takes is somebody sleeping, or they catch him sleeping to just completely wreck him? Like, shouldn't this guy be way more powerful, way more aware? Plus, I mean, like, if you want to go to like Ziggy's, they're robots, but well, whatever. It was really fun. I want to know though where this lore is. Because I can appreciate a chapter like this. You got a lot of really cool fights. You got like an adult Wendy form through Irene, like helping her, and that's when Wendy's just buffing herself up. Her pigtails in this look way bigger, and like the panel where she's powering up, it looks way bigger. It might just be the art style in that scene, but I like seeing Wendy in the adult form. I think she looks really cool, and I am curious as like how long it's gonna last though, because like is it gonna be a one-time thing? Or are there any repercussions to it? Like, what exactly is going to be the... Like what's going to be the big result of afterwards from Altair? Like, explaining... Oh, not Altair, sorry. Irene, and she's like, oh, well, guess what? You got to do X, Y, or Z now to kind of fix it, or what? I don't think she would do that. But, anyway, the whole setup has my interest. The stuff with Selene and Suzaku, as much as I want to see where that goes, I'm not opposed to waiting on it. I do want to say, though, that the stuff with Alta Face, I think, needs to be more important. It needs to have some more context and some more lore. Otherwise, it'll just be weird looking back on this, and it's like a dude introduced, and then, like, one chapter later, he lost. He, like, got completely smashed. But it's still a maybe. Like, there's an odd setup for this whole layout, but... things are progressing pretty well. I like seeing the cast, like the whole main cast, get like new spells and unlock new ways to utilize their magic. I think that's just really cool. But now we have Alta Face destroyed. Who knows how things are going to go now? Like we don't really know what's going to happen to Elentier, what's going to happen to the magic of the people in Elentier, and what's going to happen to everyone that is just present. Like the hands, I would assume, would fall over. And each of those falling over is just going to completely crush like everything in its path. So I definitely am going to be waiting for this next chapter. Another 14 days, I know, but it is what it is. You got to let them get all the stuff prepped up. And I'm still hoping we get another one of those periods where we have like a chapter every week for 10 weeks. That was really cool. I'm hoping we get something cool like that again. Even if it's like a week where we get 2 chapters. Because I know Mishima... he used to do that all the time. He'll just put out 2, or in case like I remember it was like right after the Grand Magic Games, going right through it. Those last the last 3 chapters and the 3 following, he did those back to back. Like so, in a 2-week span, you got 6 chapters, which was really hype. We don't have that with this series at the current moment. Like 100 Years Quest, really solid, but like Mishima is doing Eden Zero right now. That's why I way to strike this. Like Mishima writes for 100 Years Quest, but he doesn't draw out the entire thing. I know that he only helps sometimes. But yeah, comment below. Tell me your thoughts about the stuff with Alta Face, and if you think it's actually dead, like if it's full dead, or they only destroyed part of it, or like what exactly is anybody else's plan of like where they think this dude is going and where they think this dude is going to be. So it's just like a mystery right now of like where Alta Face is going to get directed. But I will say that I'm looking forward to it, regardless of the waiting. I want to see where things are. I'm still hoping we see at least a little bit of Selene and Suzaku in the next chapter, and maybe some more lore on the Alta Face, because I don't think it's going to be fully gone. Like Mishima gave it a little bit of lore, so I feel like he's not just going to like have it exist for 2 chapters and see it destroyed. I think there's going to be more to it. It's just got to be a like it's just going to be something we're going to have to wait a bit for. But maybe after that, we will see everything like in full clarity. Regardless of which, I'd really appreciate if you comment below. Thumbs up the video, prefer the like button, subscribe, and check out my other videos. When that, I appreciate it. I'm sorry, subscribe. Thank you all for listening. Bye.